Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Burdinsky. On my right, the editor of the Record Journal, Ralph Tomaselli, and a special guest in the studio tonight, Craig Fishbein. Anyone who's ever watched this show knows who Craig is. Craig, thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover. Let's get right into it. One of the important stories of the week is the budget that the mayor proposed at the beginning of the week. As of this production of the show, Wednesday evening was not yet on the town website, so I have not had a chance to look at it. I do understand, though, that around midday today, photocopied copies were available at the town clerk's office. I don't know what the supply is. So we're going to wait for future shows. We're going to have Chris Shortell on and Vinny Cervoni on, and we'll be more granular about the budget in the future. But we do have some Record Journal reporting that is worth talking about. It's a 1.9% increase in the budget. Craig, I want to get your view of it. My understanding is you've never voted for a tax increase in your life, true?
True.
So this is dead on arrival as far as you're concerned.
I'm not sure. More than likely,
yeah. Okay. But odds are, Ralph.
Odds are, yes.
Okay. Anything that jumped out at you, that Record Journal reporting, it's very brief. I think there were two stories, one the 5 or 6 things you need to know, and the other was just an overview. But anything that you're looking for, you want to see, serious questions that you have, any thoughts, and then we'll...
Cap and non-recurring is always interesting to me. That whole concept of, how money gets there, it never gets out, and there's a running balance, and what's that going to be used for? That's an area that I'm always intrigued by. Overtime costs, projected revenues, those kinds of things.
So the capital expenditures budget, that's a good point. On future shows, we'll get into the weeds on that a little bit. Your thoughts on the 1.9% as an editor of the paper and as a Wallingford resident? What was your impression?
I was surprised by the amount.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask. I think that there was a reference to using $6 million in reserves, and I just wondered how that compared to.
I think it's about what it has been. I didn't know you were going to phrase it like that.
Okay, yeah.
Well, wait a minute. That's how the reporting is. But I think the word use is more inaccurate than accurate.
Okay.
And assuming $6 million is the right number, what that $6 million does in the budget, it allows the mayor to run an operating deficit of $6 million if he needs to cover expenses. It's never really used. So it's the word use that,
okay.
That we'll clean up on future shows. Let's move on to the school restructuring is what they're calling it. And I loosely call it a school renovation project. There was some reporting this week about another meeting of the Board of Education where they went over the latest iteration of the school renovation plan. Craig, are you following this at all?
I have been following. In fact, on Friday at the Capitol, I had a group of high school students from Lyman Hall come. It's about 35 students, and that was one of the things they wanted to know about.
Be specific. What was their angle? What were they looking for?
Well, we talked about various issues, okay. But I was state issues. And then, what is your position with regard to having one high school was how they framed it. And we had a very nice discussion about the costs and things to look at and declining enrollment and those kinds of things. So, yeah, on that aspect, I'm looking at it, and on the, what the Board of Education is actually doing from a helicopter approach, I am
Sure.
looking at it.
What did you tell the students? They asked about one high school. What did you tell them?
That I haven't foreclosed any notion. I think it's a very heavy lift. What do you do with the present facilities? Certainly we have the VOAG and, a premier sort of thing in our town. So you can't abandon that. You can't abandon that facility. You're going to have to maintain that. Perhaps you look at some sort of technical high school sort of aspect. There's a lot of things to look at, a lot of moving parts. That's generally what I told them.
Yeah, Ralph?
Well, just an observation that maybe we can go into more in the future, but there's an option 3 here to renovate to new all 4 schools at an estimated $117 million. And of course, renovate to new is a term that can vary widely. That just doesn't seem like enough money to renovate 4 schools to new at $117 million.
Wait, Grasshopper.
Yeah.
Yeah, wait. I mean, I don't know if this is present day cost. I mean, at one of the meetings, they said you figure in an inflation rate of 3% per year compounded every year that it doesn't go out to bid. And I think it's understood that actual construction is at least 2 or 3 years away if it gets that far. Craig, though, back to you. These numbers that are being thrown out there. $117 million to renovate all 4 schools, about $103 million for one high school. Based on your answer, you're open to these expenses. You're telling the kids, yeah, sure, I'm open to this.
I'm not saying that at all.
Tell me what you're saying. Tell me what you mean. What's in your heart?
That seems like an awful large number. So those 2 numbers seem like awfully large numbers.
So there's going to be a survey. That's
right.
That's always in the plans, and it's a little unclear at this point who's going to get the survey. It's probably going to be online.
Right.
Not really sure about that. And surveys are great, and it sounds very democratic, but it's also an opportunity to soften the ground. What do I mean by that? You know the phrase "soften the ground"? Surveys are also an opportunity to do a push poll.
Right.
Now, push poll.
Right.
So, question number 1. Buildings are old and aged and not consistent with 21st century teaching techniques, haven't been seriously modified in years. Do you agree that we need to spend $117 million,
Sure.
right? Or an example of a push poll, kids are sweating during the summer and they can't concentrate and learn. Air conditioning is an absolute must. Do you agree to spend $117 million to install air conditioning? So is that kind of a push poll possible? Is it likely? I don't know, but I'm a little cautious when I see a survey, being going out with people that have an interest in the outcome. So we got to watch for that, and then this survey is another step forward to gaining the momentum to have the council eventually approve, 103 to 117 to 125 million dollars. The ball is rolling down the hill. People, why do I say that?
Well,
why do I say that?
Where's the momentum?
Oh, the momentum is you have the survey. Well, you have the survey.
Okay.
People get used to the numbers. It's reported back. I don't know. I'm making this up now
Right.
to illustrate the point. 40% of the people wanted 103 million, and 40% of the people wanted 117 million. And whether that reflects, Wallingford generally is really unknown. So people get used to the idea. Then they come to the council for designs, more detailed designs. That's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see 9 councilors saying 2 or 1 is already all in. That Jason Zandri said whatever the board wants. I can see Vinny Testa being all in. He's employee of the board. That leaves Gina sort of in a tough spot. So, so they say, we want money for designs. And I could see 9 counselors saying, whew, it's only designs. It's only designs. Let's approve the designs, and in a year from now, so they go with designs, and then 9 months or a year later, up come these luscious designs of a brand new school with air conditioning, and people say, "Yeah, this doesn't sound so bad, man. I kind of like that idea." But the step that has been missed. I'm sorry, Craig, I'm taking your time, but I'm going to throw it back to you in a sec. The step that has been missed. Is a demonstration of the need. If you're looking for 103 to 117 million, you have a heavy lift, a heavy burden of proof to demonstrate that it is needed from dollar, not from $1, but from dollar like 10 million or something. It's a very heavy burden. No one has touched that issue. The council hasn't, the board hasn't, the superintendent hasn't. And that's where we are. Craig, I sort of monopolized your time, but I needed to exude that. I needed to get that out.
No, and I totally agree. And a portion of that is utilization or appropriation of tax dollars based upon sympathy and emotion as opposed to actual need and benefit, And the benefit is very hard to quantify anyway. Does a fully renovated school, is it quantifiable in better educated students? And that's very difficult to quantify.
Very hard to prove. Ralph?
Well, I see your point. I think the point I was making was this has been out there for a while. There was a very public meeting, right, involving the Board of Education, a lot of...
We showed clips.
Right, and I just don't see any momentum for this. I think there's more momentum for community pool.
Which we'll get to in a
second. Right, but then the school project, I don't think we've had one letter. I can't remember anybody, contacting us in support of this. So so far, the momentum isn't there.
That's encouraging.
Okay. I'm just reporting.
I just want the need. I don't object to necessarily this, but if the case is made, but they're nowhere near making the case, and they're already doing designs. Right. It's like the cart before the horse.
And it's a moving target. So once the Board of Ed says, we want to spend $75 million, and that's what we want to do, I think you're going to see letters. You're going to see them coalesce. But because that range hasn't been settled down, I mean, the pool is a totally different thing because you're talking about at the most maybe 12 million. Totally different number situation.
So let's change topics and talk a little about community pool. And we have 3 clips that we're going to show when the time is right. So Bruce, get ready to tee those up. But community pool has been talked about now for a couple of years, and Dave Stein, a local architect, Silver Petrocelli, was hired by the town to do sort of a concept, and he'd been working on it. And the Park and Rec department, I think, has done a pretty good job in publicizing the pool. The concept was on their website for the longest time. We showed what was on the website, I think, last fall, and after a period of months, in my view, I think the consensus opinion was that community pool, the new proposed community pool, would be a certain size. Now, currently, the pool is 42,000 square feet, in addition to the lap pool.
Right.
And that's in part because of the feature of a zero-depth pool where you have not a ledge, not a wall. It's a very gradual dished thing, a gradual dish design, which makes it very friendly for toddlers. They can sort of wander in without facing a wall. They can fall over or trip over. So it's very family friendly. But 42,000 square feet is too big. So Silver Petrocelli, Dave Stein, proposed a 13,000 square foot concept. Okay, and that's what was on the
pool. 13,000.
I think in addition to that, there would be a lap pool.
Oh, there would be a lap. Okay.
In addition to that, there would be a splash pad.
So, right, okay.
So, but the point I'm trying to make now is that 42,000 square feet was shrunk down to 13,000 square feet. And then that brings us up, and Craig, I apologize for monopolizing this, but I got to get the facts out before we show those clips. That brought us to September 25, where there was a very thorough presentation in front of the Wallingford Town Council, and this 13,000 square foot concept was explained. Some clips from the minutes, some comments from the minutes. Christopher Council Shortell said he loves the design. If we do this, he does not want to nickel and dime it. Later in the Record Journal, he said he's all in. Councilor Laffin says he thinks it looks great. Councilor Marone said this is a fantastic design. Councilor Fishbein stated we've been kept very well informed, and he commented to Mr. Stein that he and his firm always do a great job. He then asked where we go next, and he wants to move it forward to see this happen, according to the minutes. Councilor Morgenstein again said she wants to see how we can get things going. And Councilor Shortell stated his mind is made up. So bid specs are prepared. They go out to for this concept, to put this concept into more concrete form. 13,000 square feet is put into the bid specs. It goes out to bid, and we learn from the last council meeting that in the middle of the interviews for prospective designers, the pool committee and the Park and Rec Department basically tore up the Dave Stein concept, inserted their own, and allowed the bidders to talk about a 10,000-foot design, which is about a 25% reduction from the Dave Stein concept. Craig, I'm going to take a breath, take a drink of water, but I want to get your thoughts, and then we're going to come back to some basic stuff. Yeah,
at that meeting, it was interesting that we learned about that process, or that had occurred. So, my prior statement, we've been informed, is a little bit in question at this point. Have we been part of the process to the extent that we should be, so that we make an informed decision at the other end? And I don't know that that's the case at this point.
Are you saying that your confidence in the process is shaken? And I'm
yes.
Putting it in my words, but I want to capture your thought.
The more I look into, because there was a representation that New Britain, for instance, that their pool, larger population, that their pool is something smaller than what's being designed here, and therefore what's being designed here originally as anticipated is larger than what should be designed. But then I come to find out that there's two pools in New Britain. So, is that representation accurate? So I'm having to go back and fact check things that I had heard, and it gives me some level of concern.
Yeah, and it should. Now, my editorializing is what follows here. So normally when bid specs go out, they are followed by the department. If you vary what the purchasing agent does on your own and sort of tear up the bid specs in the course of interviews and okay, a different design, and then if you tell the bidder what your budget is, both publicly and privately, a policy which the mayor has been furious about in the past, that could be grounds, in my view, for serious disciplinary action. You're violating the bid specs without authority. The mayor has a longstanding policy. Everyone knows it, that you don't come up with a budget publicly, because if you say, I want to, our budget is $6 million, you get bids for $6 million, or $6 million one, or $6 million two, or $6 million five. That's been the conversation for ever. However, in this particular case, the mayor was there when all this is unraveling. Mention of a budget, mention of varying from the bid specs, and the mayor didn't budge, didn't protest. And there's an old principle that silence is consent. Under normal circumstances, when the mayor would say, what are you doing? No, he just in my view, it's an inference I draw, but all this was checked out in advance with the mayor.
Right.
So reduce the size of the pool from 13,000 square feet to another number, good. Reduce the cost of the pool to something else, good. The new size of the pool, 10,000 square feet, I don't know, but I don't care. And now the council is put on the spot because substantive information is dropped on them on the same night that they're expected to vote. Craig, I got to go back to you, and I'm going to mop up some details, and we'll get to these clips. Your thoughts so far?
So my concerns started to rise during the meeting, and therefore at the end of the exchange, I suggested that the Park and Rec, that the pool committee obtain from the design bidder different levels, and we'll see if we get that. You know, I mean, give us something at the $4 million level, the $6 million level, the $8 million level, and then we can adequately look at, you know, do we want this feature or that feature, and pick and choose instead of just, you know, shoeboxing us into one at a perceived level of budget.
Yeah, right. So this budget, so-called,
Right.
that was shared with these bidders, and we know what happened because they said it over and over again. You know, we told the bidders what the budget was, and they said, "Oh, you'll never do the Dave Stein concept," you know, with that budget. That budget, I'm not sure what authority. I mean, the council never voted on $4 to $6 million, to my knowledge. There was no memo from the mayor. I hereby say I will veto if it comes in $1 over $6. It was sort of an unofficial thing. And the clip gets into this a little bit, so I want to explain that. And then finally, before we show the clip, as Craig pointed out, the pool committee and John Gawlak, Park and Rec director, said in several times during this meeting that the pool is way too big. There's examples, you know, Glastonbury, this town, that town, and the other. And as Craig indicated, when you start looking at all of these examples, either it's not a zero-depth pool, in other words, a pool that starts, there's a wall and you jump off in 2 feet, you know, or it's a second pool, or it may be a pool in a shoreline town, so you have a public beach, so you don't need as big a pool. I put way too much time into figuring all this out. I went to the bid of the winning bidder to see what examples they gave, because that's like a show window. That's like they put their best foot forward and give the most relevant experience. None of the examples in the written documentation that the successful bidder gave, examples of prior pools, met the criteria that we have. Zero-depth pool, not on the shoreline, and the only pool the town has. There's not a single example anywhere of that. And so even though they came up with examples to try to, I think, steer the town council into a certain result, those examples rang hollow when you subject them to close scrutiny. We're going to show some clips. We're going to get back to Craig because I've been going on too long here. So at the last council meeting, it was what's called a public hearing, and a public hearing on a bonding ordinance, and it was generally thought that a public hearing is more kind of Wild West. You know, it's not as strictly controlled because it's supposed to be a public hearing, and a public hearing is required by law, is my understanding, when you have a bonding ordinance. So this is a public hearing, and a woman stepped up to talk about this. Bruce, let's get to that first one called Food Truck. 3, 2, 1, go.
I'm very much for the pool, and I do agree that the information should have been out sooner, but my question isn't about that. In the design, are they going to be doing, I mean, have they gotten to a conversation about either food trucks or any kind of a food for sale?
There's been discussions about concession stand
Right.
versus food trucks.
Can you tell me what you're considering?
I
One or the
can't,
other?
not at this point I can't.
Okay, thank you.
Not at this point.
Okay.
Now, is that a good question she asked?
Well, I guess she's interested in the pool and she wants to know food options. But it wouldn't have been my first question, I have to say.
Well, one of the things that you and I and other guests have talked about, well, if we have $6 million on a pool, $8 million on a pool, $4 million on a pool, how do you know how long it's going to be open? What are the hours?
Right.
Are you going to have food concessions? Can you buy tickets online? And
Right. No,
after a while, the
right.
features and amenities, matters.
I'm
if
not
we can do
saying
a
they
crap
didn't
job
matter.
and take
No.
shortcuts, and we're not going to
No.
have food concession stands, why spend all this money on a pool? So I think it goes right to the heart of what's the program? Now, another administration would say to her, instead of, well, I can't talk about that. That's kind of a secret right now. Someone else would say, you know, I'm glad you asked that question because we didn't have a chance to get to it. And so, yes, here's where we're leaning. Either, you know, we think we want to do this, that, and the other, and we didn't have a chance to talk about how you're going to get your pool tags. And this is, I think, where we're going. What I'd like to see, this should be the mayor talking. And so, yeah, be able to get your day passes online and, you know, on your cell phone or whatever, you know, what, and yeah, we're going to have it open 2 nights a week, you know, subject to budgets, but this is our vision. This is what we want to do. None of that. Instead, during a public hearing, the administration offered no information. You had to ask the question. And if you didn't have all the questions, and next time, folks, come with a checklist 14 pages long and ask every single question, because the way the public hearings are structured, no one from the presenter, no one from Park and Rec or the council or the mayor goes first and sort of lays out the parameters so it's fair to the public so they know what questions to ask. That's not what happened. You saw the result. A very relevant question, and we're not going to talk about that. It's a public hearing, but sorry, it's not going to. Craig. I ranted a little bit there, but it's an I don't know, full moon or something.
Well, I guess you get to learn that's the way things happen. You know, the public hearing is going through the motions at a certain level. You know, if it was me, I would want to know what her opinion was. You know, yes, we have discussed it.
Perfect point.
What do you think? You know, because you're there doing the exchange, getting input. So as far as it being, it was a somewhat strange question first, but it's sort of like, you know, okay, we're going to build a new school, and then a parent comes up and says, well, are you going to have a planetarium there? You know, which would be a good question, right? Because we have the one at Sheehan. So it's a similar question. So, you know, in retrospect, I thought the question made sense, and it is part of the whole package.
Yeah, it's part of the concept, part of the plan. Your thoughts, and we've got the second clip. Anything?
No, I don't. Okay. I think you guys covered it.
So we got a second clip, and this is where the issue of the budget comes up. The budget that is not a budget, sort of the phantom budget. Bruce, let's play that one. 3, 2, 1, go.
Mr. Garlock, in your opening remarks, and you said something recently about the project being too large. What does that actually mean?
So the discovery, while meeting with the 4 firms in the interview process, one of the questions, or a few of the questions, centered around the concept, the scope, and does the budget estimate of $4.5 to $6 million meet that? And all 4 firms said that it doesn't.
So that was part of a longer conversation, but this budget came up many times. This so-called said supposed budget that I don't think anyone really knows where that came from. It came up many times. Ralph, I remember, I think it was when Chris Shortell was on the show last fall. I think it was a Chris Shortell episode. We talked about maximum amounts,
right?
And you and I didn't see eye to eye on that. It wasn't a serious disagreement at all. But I tried to pull teeth out of you and say, well, how much would you want to spend? And you said 4.
Did I?
I think you did.
Yeah, I did. Being that,
I think
right.
you did. So, I mean, my hypothetical question, we're going to see Vinny Tessa's clip in a second, but my hypothetical question is, suppose you get a crappy mini pool for $4 million. Yeah. Suppose you get a mini pool.
Yeah.
Not consistent with the Wallingford tradition.
To be honest with you, and I would, as I sit here right now as a layperson, I don't know if I would know the difference between a $4 million and a... Right. So I would need a lot more detail, and I should have before I answered. So I certainly don't want a crappy pool, and I certainly, if we're going to do this, I do think there should be amenities. And I'm also not so sure, and you guys probably know more than I, but we've... What he said was, well, we somehow checked with 4 firms. Well, but I mean, do you stop at 4 firms? I mean, just because 4 firms said you can't do it, is it impossible that there's a 5th or a 6th out there?
I'm not so sure that happened, but Craig, your thoughts.
So I think what Mr. Garlock meant was that in the bid process, they asked that question because I believe there was 4 bidders on the project. Okay. So. it's an investment by the town. It's just like us buying open space. We're investing in some sort of capital project to perhaps bring people to our town and or keep people in our town. So, I don't have a cap number, for that reason, for many reasons. So I want to know what is available to us.
We don't know. I don't know. And as you know, I'm sorry, but sometimes I'm a little more skeptical and I challenge stuff that other people don't challenge. We don't know exactly what happened in those rooms. There are allegedly statements that were made that no one is accountable for. Mm-hmm. Allegedly verbal statements by developers, and the most outrageous is allegedly statements assigned to Silver Petroselli. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But without a transcript, I don't really know what the context was, what the tone of the question was, what the premise of the question was. And now that I know that there are examples of other pools being smaller than 13,000 square feet, even smaller than 10, those examples don't hold up. I'm now a little bit skeptical about everything that was said in that room. And, I can see a scenario where the pool committee says, if it's over $6 million, there's no business for you guys. It's going to be vetoed by the mayor. If it's over $6 million, it's not going to be approved. And they say, holy smokes, we better cut down the size to preserve the margins for everybody all around. And so they, no, don't worry about it, but we'll keep it under $6 million. But you got to reduce the size of the pool. And the pool committee say, okay. But we'll never really, in my view, we'll never know the answer. But taking literally what John Gawlak and the pool committee said, Silver Petroselli, who did this concept in September, 3-4 months before, this bidding process, Silver Petroselli put their prestige on the line when they came up with a concept, and they had an estimate of 4 or 4.5 to 6 million. They didn't make that up. And then, according to this description of events, Silver Petroselli comes into the pool committee during their qualifications interview. They say, what we said 3-4 months ago? It was poppycock. We didn't mean that at all. That was a very bad number. Sure, we might have spent 1.5 years investigating the concept, and sure, we might have said 4 to 6 million, but no, we were absolutely dead wrong. That's kind of what is being represented, Silver Petroselli said. I'm just not buying it. I'm sorry. Maybe it happened, I don't know if it did or didn't, but I'm not giving all that much. Wait, Craig.
Just briefly,
Yeah.
Based upon the information that we got, Silver Petroselli is not in the business of designing pools. So, maybe it was a bad number, but, bully on whoever made the representation that was a good number, taken from somebody who isn't in that business. So
Yeah.
It's possible the number was bad to begin with. Possible.
So we got one final clip. Vinny Testa had some thoughts. Vinny Testa was on the Board of Ed when the big school renovation project went through. Let's hear his perspective. Bruce, 3, 2, 1, go.
For starters, let me just go on record as saying this, the whole idea of putting a ceiling on anything at this stage of the game is foolhardy. I've seen too many situations in the past where, without knowing what we were trying to do, somewhere along the way, this body or the administration or the combination thereof put a dollar figure, and then that drove the program, and it didn't work out as well as it probably should have. And I talked about the last large school renovation project as a perfect example, and everybody was involved in that. But at some point, from the beginning, and I was on the board at the time, from the beginning, we asked an employee to come up with just an estimate. And once that number got out there, once $35 million got on the table, it drove the bus. And from that point forward, the whole process was wrong. And it never worked out as well as it should have. It was nice, but we're looking at another one because of it. And that was the problem. And then as we started talking, somebody would say, $50 million is the top. No, 55. Nowhere did we ever start from the beginning and say, this is everything we need, and this is all that it's going to cost. And then get together and say, this is what we will pay. So now go back and cut down. And if you see where I'm going? So don't ask for a figure, because I don't know what a pool cost. I may say, you can have 6. I don't know what $6 million gets you for a pool. I have no idea. 4, 3, 8, 10. Let's just throw a number out there. That means nothing because we don't know what pools cost. And it's all arbitrary.
Your thoughts?
Well, I guess I don't feel that bad about not knowing what a 4 or 6 million. I guess I'm not alone. And the serious point there, and Vinny makes it much better than I did, is, and I think Craig has tried to make it, which is, let's get some bids on what we want to do here, and let's not scale it back from the beginning, and then we can decide after that.
Well, that was the process. We wanted 13,000 square feet.
Right. No, I think what would be the problem with going out to bid for a 13,000 square foot pool, and then at some point everybody's saying, well, we just can't afford the $13,000. That would be a better way to do it. Now you've got at least one counselor I see on video and another one sitting with us who are now questioning a process that seemed to be going along pretty well.
Yeah. And I think that's how most towns do it. They agree. They agree on a concept,
right,
and say, okay, this is where we're going to go. They put it out to bid. If it ends up too expensive, they rebid it.
Right.
And if the Park and Rec Department, the pool committee, wanted to have designs for different size pools, they could say, 8, 11, 13, and put it out to bid that way and get some options on the table. Now, I just want to be clear about one thing. I don't know if 10,000 square feet, which is what the current pool committee and the current design professional is working on, I don't know if that's too small.
No.
I don't know if it's just the right size.
No.
I just don't know, but no one else knows either.
Right.
But that's what is going to be delivered to the town council. They are going to be in a box. Months have been spent on a design, and without any real evaluation as to what Wallingford as a community, does Wallingford as a community want 10,000 square feet? We knew it wanted 13,000 square feet because that was well vetted and well publicized. We have no idea about 10,000. Craig, the final word on this issue, and then we'll move on.
So a couple of things.
Yeah.
A lot of times, Vinny Testa and I are like a tornado and a volcano.
Boy, you sure are.
Yeah. And, but as I've said before in public, in private, on this show, I appreciate having Vinny Testa on the town council. So somebody can clip that out and use it in the next election. But that being said, I agree with everything he had to say, and I appreciate his perspective. I also appreciate this show and you analyzing that and bringing it to the public's attention, because I know what to look for now. I know a little bit more about this process and what questions to ask. So, just generally, that's what I want to say.
What, can I, just one last real quick one. Because you mentioned that there's this, which often happens in Wallingford, it sounds like no one's really sure exactly how it got to 10,000, and at least there's no written record of it. Is that?
That's right.
Okay. And it just points out, I'll just point out again that in the other towns that we cover, you have a legislative body, the council, and you have a city or a town manager. And there's never these situations where the council can't get answers from the person that's overseeing town departments. I mean, he works for them. These things happen in Wallingford because the Wallingford mayoral position is so powerful in so many ways. And as I've said before on shows, I'm just not sure this is the best system to go forward with because we keep coming up with these situations.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Let's move on to something else. The next town council meeting has one issue on it.
I can't believe that.
It's one issue.
How do you have a
It's
one?
Craig's concept.
How do you have
It's Craig's idea. Craig Fishbein. He's sitting right over there to my far right. To have adopted a resolution opposing tolls in Connecticut. Craig's going to explain, a little bit more about that in a minute. Now, I don't know of any Republican, any Democrat, any person alive today that wants tolls. They don't want them. The issue is, how does a transportation program in Connecticut get funded? No one likes additional taxes. No one likes additional borrowing. You know, it's a bitter pill. No matter where you go, it's a bitter pill. What's unique about this situation, and we're going to spend some time on before we blitz through all these other topics. What's unique about this situation is that it's coming in front of a state issue, basically coming in front of the town council. Now, that being said, we know, and we've heard of the arguments against tolls. It's unfair, it's regressive, too expensive, it doesn't work. You know, we know the populist table pounding against tolls. Craig, what is the Republican position on funding the transportation program? We know they don't like tolls. What do they like?
So I don't speak for the Republican Party. I have not been coached as to what the Republican position is. I can tell you that my position, and it's shared by my fellow members of the Conservative Caucus, which I'm the vice chairman of, is that there is plenty of money appropriated to the Special Transportation Fund, between 1.75 and $2 billion is appropriated. A lot of it is used for other things. A lot of it is appropriated, but it doesn't get there. We are generally in favor of some bonding initiatives for capital projects as opposed to tolls. There's no guarantee that any of the toll money actually goes for transportation.
Lockbox?
The lockbox doesn't work. I did put together language, a tighter lockbox, and that was defeated along party lines. And part of the problem with the lockbox is what is defined as a transportation project under that language.
Well, that's easy to fix. You just say tolls are part of the transportation project and proceeds go into lockbox. That's so easy to fix.
But what it comes out for is potentially the problem. So I defined a transportation project as anything so defined as of 2017. The concern is, just by way of example, that the state police, they police our roads, and that could be construed as a transportation project. So state police cars would now be a transportation project. They would use that fund for those kinds of things. So the lockbox is full of holes.
The voters didn't think so when they voted for the lockbox at the last election. Mm-hmm. And Craig, we're going to turn it over to you to expound a little bit on your resolution. But this is my understanding of the Republican position. And I'm not saying it's wrong, and I'm not saying it's right. All I'm saying is this is a complicated, I mean, it's easy to get populist on us and say no tolls, but there has to be, another way around it. So Len Fasano was touting the priority. This is according to the Connecticut Mirror, Keith Phaneuf. I hold him, he's very well respected and knows what he's talking about. Fasano was touting the prioritized progress. The Republican legislators' alternative, that's you, the Republican legislators' alternative plan to finance long-term transportation upgrades. Basically, I'm going to put in my own words now. The Fasano plan is to say bond it, bond it, bond it, bond it. And apparently the number swells from the $800,000 currently spent to maybe like 1.2 million bonded every year. Now just think of that. The debt goes up 1.2 billion. Did I say million? 1.2 billion every year, principal and interest under the Craig Fishbein plan or the Republican plan. Bonded every year, 1.2 billion, 2.4 billion, 4.6 billion, and so on. And after 10 years, it's like, holy smokes, that's the Republican plan. Who pays that? It's not free, right?
Right.
It's just not free. Who pays that off? The taxpayers with principal and interest. The toll plan, under the Lamont plan, the current level of transportation spending is level for 3-4 years until the toll money kicks in. And who pays off the transportation projects? Well, under the toll plan, it's sort of the toll money. We can solve this lockbox problem. I mean, I don't think that's a serious issue. The toll money, instead of being borrowed, the toll money goes to pay for transportation projects. However, you got to pay tolls. Yeah, every time you pass one of those things, it reads your plate number and you get a bit. So it's not free, Craig. walk us through how you hope the council meeting is going to go, what your resolution says, what you think is going to happen, and why you want it to happen.
Well, tolls are a regressive tax.
Yep.
Certainly, not only would it be paid by those that are on the roads, it would be paid by those that buy a commodity that traveled those roads.
Including out-of-state drivers?
Well, that's a whole problem in and of itself. We read about Massachusetts has a few tolls, nothing like what's being done here. And I think it's $11 million that Massachusetts can't collect from out-of-state residents because there is no reciprocity. Do we not end up with the same thing here? Yes, people say, I see a lot of out-of-state plates, these people should be paying to use our roads, but is it really collectible? Ultimately, it's going to fall on the shoulders of Connecticut residents, especially with the congestion pricing tolling, which is going to go up. I mean, I'm driving to Hartford almost every day, New Haven, Court and all that stuff. Traffic is always backed up. It's going to be expensive to travel either way. So ultimately, those people that live in the state that are traveling to and from work are going to pay a higher price, and therefore most of the toll burden is going to fall on Connecticut residents' shoulders.
So at this council meeting, we're bringing basically a state issue to the local level. Are you expecting a vote on this, and how do you think it's going to go? And then I'm going to push back on whatever you say. I'm going to push back on.
Sure, let's go. Well, I'll tell you that there is a toll informational forum the day after the town council meeting.
And they're going to give a balanced view?
I have no idea what the presentation
put on by
is.
Some Republicans who don't like tolls?
I think that would be accurate.
Go ahead.
I would hope that the factual information that is conveyed is accurate. We tend to like good facts.
All right.
Laura Devlin, who's the ranking member of the House on the Transportation Committee, and Henry Martin, who's the ranking member from the Senate Transportation Committee, are coming to Wallingford Town Hall on Wednesday, the 10th at 7 o'clock to give an informational forum and to answer people's questions.
Yeah, but I want to pivot over to the town council.
No, I know. So
both sides going to be presented at the town council? Who's going to, I know, is Gina Morgenstein going to present the case for tolls? Have you talked with Gina and she's going to lay out the competing case?
I do not coordinate.
Vinny Testa, is he going to compete?
I welcome anything.
Zandri, Testa, and Morgenstein, they're going to get together and present the opposing view, and then may the best side win? Is that how it's going to work?
No problem with you coming to the microphone and arguing the other side.
I'll be here on the Citizen Mike show.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Tuesday, though. You film on Wednesday.
I know, but
Anyway,
yeah.
So I would expect that more than likely what would happen that night, although I'll probably vote against it, is that there would be a tabling of that to allow residents to perhaps go to the toll informational forum and to readdress it on the 23rd. I would hope on the 23rd that the resolution passes. I know that last night, I believe it was in Woolcott, they passed it. Meriden tabled it. Southington tabled it. Milford is taking it up, I believe, next week. Those are the towns that I know about.
Ralph.
Well, I just point out, as Craig did, that this is the third resolution by a town council in our area about tolls. I cannot recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, a similar resolution on a state issue as recently. In Southington and Meriden, you had, well, here's what it boils down to, Mike. You said it right in the beginning.
Oops.
Who wants tolls? No one wants more taxes. No one wants more tolls. So what this resolution does is it puts Democrats on the council in, what's their position? Either they support no tolls, or they appear to support tolls, and it's all, I can't help but think that it's all designed to back Democrats into a corner and make them get up there and look like they're in favor of tolls and there are more taxes. And what does it accomplish?
Yeah, there's a third alternative.
Okay, what's the third?
The third alternative is that is to go on the offensive and say resolutions like this have no place in the local town council. It's grandstanding. It's riling the base. It's attention grabbing, but it's by no means a fair presentation of the issues. And this has no place on any town council. Now there may be town councils around the state dominated by the Republicans. They want to play that game. They want to play that game. But this is not a proper a subject for a Wallingford Town Council. This is not a balanced discussion and a balanced debate. This has no place. This is grandstanding and attention getting, and I got to make sure that Craig has enough time to finish.
Could I just say one more
finish
thing?
your thought?
Mike,
yeah.
I think you're...
And that's the position they should take.
I know.
Baloney. We're not doing this again. Let me just finish one thing.
Good.
Because when the Democrats get on in the majority, we're going to bring up a global warming resolution. And we're going to smoke out all the Republican climate change deniers. We're going to do that and make Craig and all these people that deny climate change to do that. And it has no end. No end once this is. Go ahead.
Mike, your argument, you're making a case in a way, and I admire it and I buy it. But it worked 20 years ago. It worked 10 years ago. In 2019, what you're saying is going to be portrayed as though you're in favor of tolls.
Whoever wants to portray it, that's fine.
But we're past the point where, and that's what I most object to here is people who are aware we're past the point.
Yeah.
And both sides keep using it against each other. Go ahead.
Craig.
So, I have no political motivation behind this. I look back at, it was a couple of Novembers ago when the resolution passed by the council with regard to Congress and the Marino bill, which I thought at the time was inappropriate. It was done because it was the week before Election Day. It was totally for that reason, in my opinion. That's what I said publicly as well as privately. This is timely. It's actually before the state is a direction asking the town council to direct its local representatives in the state to take a position. I think it's appropriate. I'm not looking to, if Democrats want to vote against tolls or for tolls, whatever.
So we'll make that the final word on this this subject.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do in the next couple of minutes is run through the topics we would have discussed had we had time and had I not mouthed off, because I got pretty mouthy on a couple of issues. And that took a lot of Craig's time away. And then we're going to invite Craig back on the show, which is sort of unprecedented, but to cover some of these things that we thought we were going to cover and we just didn't, we just couldn't get it in. That would have to be probably in May, but
whatever.
I'll get together with Craig.
Available.
So here's what we would have talked about if we had planned this a little better. The town's bond rating, that was in the news, and just what he thinks about that. The whole issue of juvenile justice. Craig is sort of active in this area, so we got to talk about juvenile justice and these car thefts and all of that. He's got some pretty interesting bills. I'm going to unclip my little bundle and go through them. There was a interesting thought on a school voucher program, removing animals from hot cars, so the police wouldn't be liable. That's so nice. Sound suppressors on hunters' guns, not silencers. It's easily confused, right? I just want to sound suppressors. An act eliminating Election Day registration, a bill that would make it unnecessary for towns to publish half-page notices in the Record Journal in the event of a new...
Let's just skip that one, Mike. Let's get to that one in May, too.
Appealing to the Superior Court from an Adverse Ethics Commission decision. Whether or not local police should be required to cooperate with ICE, and the Immigration Authority. The issue that came up with Wallingford Center Street Cemetery, too complicated to do, but there's an interesting bill that was put in and some background, maybe some context there that, and the tobacco products thing. Craig, you've got about a minute to whatever you want here.
Well, I'd like to say, and some people know, that I'm running again for town council in November, and that I have filed the appropriate paperwork to do so. And, you know, I appreciate all the support that I've gotten in the past, and I hopefully will get support in this race once again in November. It's fun, and I appreciate what you guys do, because you certainly keep me and the public informed. So.
Let's make that the final word. Craig Fishbein, thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show. And again, my apologies on behalf of the show for not getting to everything, but we got to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, right.
We got to a lot of stuff, and we're going to have you back. And especially thank you, viewers, for tuning in. We do appreciate it. You can watch Citizen Mike Show on WPA on Thursday, Fridays, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. But also the show pops up on YouTube after a couple of days. Go to YouTube and punch in the Citizen Mike Wallingford channel. Follow all the usual prompts. Or I can send you a link directly to the YouTube production once it's posted up. Just let me know you want that to the studio, or contact me personally, and you can get it that way. Thanks, everybody, and thanks again to Craig Fishbein. Good night, everybody.